I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHack's Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is, there is no need to understand. This is really important for people to keep in mind while they're in the dating process. As you get to know somebody, it's very likely that you're going to encounter some things about this person that aren't very pleasant, that aren't very attractive, and that you would prefer not to see. You won't love these things, but some of these things you'll be able to live with, and some of these things you won't. However, throughout this process, there is a trap that people are subject to falling into. And we could call this trap the trap of understanding. Once people become cognizant of the problematic attributes of the other, they can fall into the trap of trying to understand where these problems are coming from, because they believe that understanding the origin of the problem will somehow lessen the impact of the problem or resolve it entirely. This isn't true. And no one acts like it's true in any other medical profession. Like, if someone gets diagnosed with cancer, the doctors don't spend months trying to get to the bottom of where the cancer came from. It's here now. So the question becomes, what are they going to do about it moving forward? Once the disease has manifested in the patient, the origin is an intellectual curiosity at best and completely irrelevant at worst. For some reason, however, in the domain of psychology, we've come to believe that understanding the origin of a problem is synonymous with treating the problem. And this belief has migrated into the popular imagination and has significantly altered expectations in romantic relationships. The issue is no longer that someone is untrustworthy or critical or rejecting. No, these are just symptoms of narcissistic abuse or an emotionally unavailable parent or sexual trauma, etc., etc. And once the person and everyone around the person deeply and thoroughly processes these experiences, the surface symptoms will disappear. And until that happens, patience and compassion, and most of all, understanding is what is called for. However, I'm here to tell you that at a certain stage of the game, it doesn't fucking matter where a problem comes from. The problem is that the problem still exists. Plain and simple. And understanding the origin of this problem is an intellectual curiosity at best and completely irrelevant at worst. Like, in the majority of cases, the people you are dating are old enough to have dealt with these issues by now. As I've stated previously, it may not be their fault, but it is their responsibility. It could very well be true that a woman's emotional difficulties or a man's relational problems stem from, say, a traumatic childhood. But that childhood could have been 20 or 30 years ago. What has that person been doing in the intervening time to solve the problem? Therapy? Well, if that could have solved the problem, it would have solved the problem by now. What else? Is this problem as much of a problem for them as it is for you? If not, you're going to have a tough go of it. People will only change for other people to a point. For change to be sustainable, it must be intrinsically motivated. I appreciate this can sound harsh, but frankly, so is the prospect of spending an inordinate amount of time in a difficult relationship. This is true irrespective of the origin of the problem in question. Yeah, that child didn't ask for those things to happen to them, but that person hasn't been a child for a very long time. You might have sympathy for their ongoing difficulties, but that absolutely doesn't mean that you should move forward with a relationship out of a misplaced sense of pity or a misguided desire to support someone out of their unhappiness. If you appreciate the insights on this channel, I would highly encourage you to get your hands on a copy of my book, The Value of Others. Over the course of 432 pages, I delve deep into my economic model of relationships and explain the behavior of both men and women in the game of mating and dating. I also provide a lot of actionable advice on how to get and keep more of what you want in the sexual marketplace. Once you read The Value of Others, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Now available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. The links are in the description. If you're a longtime supporter of this channel, you know that I often liken romance to business. If it works in one, it tends to work in the other. And this holds true even with the topic under consideration. As I've said before, dating is an extended hiring process. And in that process, the man is the employer. This is because the man is expected to extend an invitation to the woman and not the other way around. So let's imagine that you, the man, are an executive at a company, and you're currently interviewing candidates for a position at your firm. If one of these candidates interviews poorly, if they are socially awkward or aggressive or arrogant or stubborn or bumbling, do you really need to spend time trying to figure out why that candidate didn't interview well? Are you going to try to understand why that particular candidate was anxious or incompetent or entitled? Absolutely not. You might have sympathy for the fact that the interview didn't go well, but that sympathy doesn't extend to devoting time and trouble to figuring out the origin of their problem, let alone offering them a position with the expectation that you would be able to change them into a confident, competent employee over time. What you should do is say, thank you for taking the time to come down here. We'll take your application under consideration and then move on to the next fucking candidate. And that's what men should do in the courtship process. Once it becomes clear that they have encountered a deal breaker, in the sense that it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to have a long-term, stable, harmonious relationship with a particular woman, given her behavior or personality, then he should simply move on to the next potential candidate. Hire slow, fire fast. Do not fall into the trap of trying to understand why she is the way she is. And absolutely do not fall into the trap of thinking that you can help her get over it. This is because insight and emotional support are often not enough to solve many of these problems. Appreciate that it's going to be very poor consolation indeed if you understand the origin of a problem that continues to manifest in your relationship. You are not a saint. At a certain point, your sympathy is going to dry up and your patience is going to wear thin. And you're going to find yourself in a high conflict, or at the very least, a high stress relationship. Better to say thank you, but I don't think we're compatible. All the best to you. Very simple, easy to understand advice, right? So why don't guys follow it? The reason why guys don't follow it is generally that they have already decided that this is the woman that they want to have a relationship with. They emotionally invested in the woman too soon because they clearly didn't have access to certain data points that would have impacted their decision to invest had they been known. And guys typically do this because either the woman is very, very attractive or the man has low self-esteem and or low optionality. Could also be both. In this case, the man has put himself behind the eight ball. He has already decided that he wants to have a relationship with a particular woman. So when the problems become manifest, he now feels like he is responsible for solving her problems to get what he wants. And this is not necessarily the case. This is why it's important for men to keep a tight rein on their emotions throughout the courtship process. You do not invest in a particular employee until after you've hired him. The same is true for women. Do not invest in a particular woman until after you've sufficiently vetted her. Do this and you won't fall into the trap of understanding, which is a symptom of emotionally investing in a woman before it's appropriate. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And please send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message, as it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. And anyone looking to join my free weekly newsletter or book a paid one-on-one consultation can do so on my website. The links to everything are in the description below. As always, I appreciate your support and thank you for listening.